there isn't just skilled in the industry. There's like a junior developer and a, I don't know the names for, because we don't work like in the
medium
industry.
developer,
medium,
leads,
and high probably.
Leads, seniors.
Yeah, sure. That's probably it.
Venti,
the tall ones,
Grandes,
tall grande.
We need
and
a
Venti.
tall programmer.
Butterscotch Shenanigans. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 192 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast, Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I made the mistake of having coffee yesterday, but not today.
I'm Sam, and I just chugged a 5-hour energy.
And this is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today is a Fabrizi Tooth Fairy 2019.
Ooh, yes, one of my favorites of the year.
Yeah.
Smells great, gives you money.
Mm-hmm.
What else could you want?
Takes your teeth, though. Be careful.
That's right.
Yeah, but only the ones you don't need anymore.
That's true.
That's right. Before we get started, we have a warning. There's going to be profanity in this show. Profanity warning. There it is.
We are not legally liable anymore.
Nope. And I don't think we ever were, because I don't think that's a thing.
I don't think so.
No, it's not.
No, that's not
We're not FCC regulated.
We're just doing this out of courtesy, really.
That's true.
We'd also like to thank our recurring supporters over at moneygrab.bscotch.net who are routinely hurling quarters, dollars,
Dimes.
and sometimes dimes right at our faces.
And sometimes obscenities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the weirdest way to get paid, though,
Yeah.
in this business.
Nobody pays me in curses.
I mean, have you looked in our comments on our games, because that's
Mainly what it is.
basically-
That's true. We have a tip jar and we have a swear jar where
Yeah.
people put their swears in there.
it's
and
basically like our free games. The way that people seem to think that the way that they pay us for the free games is just by hurling obscenities in the
That's
swear jar.
reviews.
That's
Yeah.
why we do what we do.
Yep.
It pays the bills. All right, we need to talk about something important,
Mhm.
which is something about a coat.
So I got a story.
All right,
I got a yarn.
buckle your shoes, pilgrim.
Bring out your knitting needles. I got
Right.
a yarn to spin.
All right,
Well, are you gonna spin it? Or
Bust
am I
out
gonna
your
spin it?
loom
bust out your loom.
because I got a yarn.
All right.
So,
I feel like we've sufficiently ramped
So-
up this story.
the bit of backstory on this is that
Oh, this is a backstory.
Here's a backstory. I had a conversation with my wife the other day because doing some dishes or something, and I don't know, something bad happened, like in the context of the house or whatever. And my immediate response is, "It's fine." And she just kind of started giggling, and she was like, "Everything just seems like it's fine to you. Like whenever things happen, you're just like, this is fine," and then you kind of just muddle through
Like
and figure
that
it out.
dog in the flaming building.
Exactly. This is fine.
This is fine.
And
What's the alternative?
well, so I started laughing a little bit, and I was thinking back on, just what had happened that exact day, which is the following story, which I had gone to the gym, and I went there right
So
before.
you're Tarantinoing this thing. So we're
Mhm.
starting at the end.
Yeah, and
then
come
going-
back. So I'd gone to the gym in the morning,
Uh-huh.
and this was the class that ends at 7:45, or sorry, at 8:45, which gives me just a scant 15 minutes to get to the office and shower up. Now, at this time, I'd been planning on using the gym's shower, okay? But there's only
Yeah.
2 of them. And so I hadn't noticed that 2 people had snuck out right toward the end of class to go, snipe their showers.
Ah,
The shower
the
sniper.
shower snipe.
And so I go and I jiggle the handle, it's locked. Jiggle the other handle, it's locked. I'm like, well, shit. Okay, now I need a plan because they have towels at this place, right? They have
Mhm.
towels in the gym facilities for toweling off at, so I didn't have to bring one,
Great.
which means I did not bring one. But at this point, now I have to make a decision. I can wait for 20 minutes
Right.
for
Because
someone to
these
get out of
people
the
are
shower.
just going to
It's
be.
gonna take forever.
Yeah.
Or I can get to our office building, which also has a shower, but
No
not
towels.
towels. And I was like, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out.
Did you think about
It re-
borrowing a towel? Borrow one and bring it back later? Bring it back
No,
the next-
because the towels are inside the shower stall.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
They thought of
I was
everything.
locked out. So I'm like, okay, well, I know exactly what my very next move is, which is to get to the office and begin showering. I have no idea how this is going to end.
Step one.
Step
Wait,
one.
Which day was this?
This is like probably last Monday. I think. No, last
Monday.
Tuesday or something like that. So I get to the office and I'm just drenched in sweat
Let's
because
see where this is going.
this is this cardio workout.
Mhm.
And so I'm just like disgusting. Make my way up, and the whole time I'm just thinking, I'm like, okay, maybe there's going to be some materials involved in the like maybe there's some leftovers in there. Someone maybe left a towel. I don't know. Get into the shower room, and there's nothing. But I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna be thinking about this while I'm showering because I'm here now. Got to get clean. So
I'm moving forward with
I'm
this.
just gonna keep going. So I hop in the shower, like this is fine, whatever, I'll figure it out. And so I hop in the shower, getting cleaned off the whole time, just thinking about how is this going to function? How is it going to operate?
Okay, all right, what's step 2? What's the next move here? I'm all wet now.
Yep. So I shower up, turn off the shower.
I'm all wet, and I'm at work. I'm down the hall from my office.
Rip the shower curtain open, and then I'm just standing there. And the room is almost completely empty, right? And I'm like, okay.
All right, this is the moment of truth.
I need to figure out now. I have to somehow become dry.
And so you had your clothes.
So I had my
dry.
sweaty clothes.
Uh-huh.
I had my clean clothes.
Uh-huh.
And then there's like a rack in the shower area.
Like a wire
rack. I probably can't dry off with that.
It's just made of wire.
And then there's a blow dryer. And I'm like, oh, yes. 'Cause I hadn't seen it. So I go pick it up. I'm very excited. I'm dripping water all over the place. And I look around, there's no outlet in there. Apparently you're supposed to take this blow dryer and go over to the bathroom, which is right across the hall.
But they put it in the shower.
But they put it in the shower room. And so I'm like, okay.
That's weird.
Well, I guess that's a non-starter. So I'm just standing there for a second.
March naked across the hall.
Not at the work building, at least.
Yeah.
So I'm standing there, and then I'm like, well, I'm going to go ahead and try to just like slick this off like real fast.
You got to squeegee.
You
do the
squeegee your body.
hand
So I hand squeegee.
I mean, I always do a post-shower squeegee anyway.
I mean, that's a good way to do it. Post-shower squeegee.
It's a good move.
Good band name, too.
Yeah. It keeps your towel from getting super wet, you know?
Well, yeah, who wants a wet towel? What's
Nobody
the purpose?
does. Right.
But yeah, so I do the post-shower squeegee. And of course, it's still just soaking wet because it turns out not super effective.
Yeah, it's not very effective.
And especially not before you put on clothes. Like, that's not a good way to do it. And look around, and I see my coat.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like a nice coat, you know? It's like one of the pea coat things.
Like wool or something.
Wool or whatever. I'm just looking at it. And I'm sort of doing the math.
And it's looking back.
It's looking back. It's like, no. This is not my purpose. But I'm looking at it, and I'm like, okay. It's got enough surface area. It's not super absorbent. It's not super absorbent.
At all. It's a coat.
It's also like a wool coat. It's meant to repel water. But I'm like, I'm pretty sure there's enough surface area on that if I just go for it.
Just go to town on that
And
thing.
so I'm like, okay, left arm is for my left arm and my left leg. Right arm. So I just start breaking down this coat into the towels that it actually is.
All right.
And then I'm like, okay, this is my only option because otherwise I have to walk out of this shower and work basically either nude or soaking wet, one of the two, neither of which are good.
Or both.
And so, so I used my coat and I just completely toweled off using my nice wool pea coat thing. And then,
But then it dried because then you were at work all day.
And then I went to work and no one said a word. No one was like, hey, you definitely toweled off using your coat today. No one knew.
I've had this experience.
Everything was fine.
Where, I forgot a towel or something and I went to a gym that doesn't have towels and then I used like a shirt or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never gone into it already knowing that I didn't have a towel. Just thinking,
this makes me think of the sort of humanity's approach to global problems. You know, it's like because we got global warming, we got all the trash that we're piling up, all that kind of stuff, and right now we're all just like we're just gonna keep doing it.
Yep.
We know this is bad. We know
we're gonna
this
have
is
to deal
real
with
bad,
this.
and we know we're gonna have to deal with it. But we don't have to deal with it right now. So we'll just keep doing it, and then eventually we're gonna figure it out once it becomes a problem.
Well, I think that's the thing. The problem is that the issue with human ingenuity is that you tend to almost always just find your way out of these pickles you get yourself.
Yeah, we have so far. That's why we still exist.
There'll be always some way to kind of get yourself out. There's always a coat.
And once we
There
reach
may
that,
not always be a way, but so far there has been.
yeah, but that's the thing is once we reach a point where we have no way out, that's the way out. We're done now. Problem solved. We did it.
Mm-hmm.
We ended the earth and now it's not our problem anymore.
Yeah.
Somebody else's problem.
Yep.
So that's good.
And I hope you enjoyed your yarn.
That's a good story. Okay, we need to talk about studio stuff.
What's in the news?
Last week we talked about how all of a sudden Nintendo announced Mario Maker 2 and we were like, shit. So what's coming up soon ish is the Levelhead Alpha. We're doing it. We're getting this in the hands of people, actual human people, and we're going to see what happens.
How many people? We don't know.
We don't know. Ideally,
The
somewhere
details-
between 15 and 39,000.
Yeah.
So kind of in that.
This is similar to the toweling situation. We know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
We're not exactly clear on the details yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's basically because I want as many people as possible to get our web infrastructure tested. But we also don't want a huge number of people because the whole thing might be a disaster.
Yep. Because there are other things we need to test, like our feedback reporting system. So, for example, if we have a shitload of people and then our feedback system is terrible, and then we end up creating a ton of problems for ourselves trying to figure out how to deal with that. So
if we don't have enough people to reveal that there's a problem with the feedback system, then now we don't have a thing to fix.
Yeah. So it's likely that we'll do something similar to what we do with Crashlands, where we do like a smaller group for an alpha and then a larger group for a beta kind of a thing. So that's kind of where we're angling, but it'll still probably be a sizable group.
Yeah.
So we sent out the Ballyhoo. And in the Ballyhoo, that's our newsletter. In the Ballyhoo, we have information about how to sign up for the Levelhead Alpha, or rather to get into the Rumpus Abs, the anti-bug squad. And so we're going to be selecting from that group of people who have signed up. There's no guarantees. If you sign up for the Abs, we simply cannot get everybody.
There's already 3,000 people in that list.
Yeah.
As of before we sent the Ballyhoo.
Yeah. There are strict limits on how many people we can have in this thing. And it's well under 3,000. So there's no guarantee, but we still appreciate, everybody.
Yeah, throw your hat in the ring. But I'm so excited to get it to people's hands finally.
Yeah. So we need to talk about Adam basically played Levelhead for the first time, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I was waiting until the campaign was in because I wanted to have the new player experience. I wanted to have the experience of, unlocking content in the editor and doing all that kind of stuff. So, after I spent basically my 5-hour workday of doing my own stuff on the Rumpus side of things, and then spent the rest of the evening originally planning to just play the game.
And instead,
Seth
and I debugged a bunch of things
because it kept deleting his save, which is one of those. That's one of those minor bugs that we could put that off until post launch, but we thought maybe we should just we're free. It's a Saturday.
Well, it is one of those things too, right? It's like that was the same thing with Crashlands. There's exactly one class of bugs that makes us drop everything. That
I hate them so much.
That class is the one that deletes people's progress.
Yep.
And we had these.
If the game crashes, that's fine. We'll fix that.
That's fine. As long as you can boot
it back up. We can fix that within a day or two.
It's basically like everything that happens is fine. If we have to come up with some wonky way to get some reverse compatibility, we can figure that out. What we can never do is retrieve somebody's 30 hours of progress that they have now lost.
Freaks me out every time, especially with a game like Levelhead, so I put up the level building the Sam video, which was a 20-minute time lapse of an hour build of a level. And yeah, you can imagine if someone spends an hour building a level, it's very different from playing a game too, because it's sort of like a creative endeavor, and you're not going to be able to there's always going to be you can't just come back in and recreate it from memory.
You can't resume your progress.
Exactly.
If you can't just complete the same set of quests and get back to where you were. Yep. You'd have to rebuild every block. Exactly.
And so that's the stuff that just gives me the willies. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it at all.
Yeah, so that
happened.
So that happened to me a bunch of times. I would make some progress and come back to main menu, and then it would get nuked, and then I would keep on playing that game. And so then after I was trying to nail it down and try to figure out what the hell was going on, but I couldn't make it happen consistently, just frequently, but not in a consistent way. So then finally I just sent Seth a direct message. It was like 7 p.m. I think, something like that.
Which I was already programming some other stuff.
Yeah, anyway. I figured Seth would be working anyway, but also I was like, this is that kind of bug.
Yep.
So he should probably know about this. Yeah. Also, it was becoming very difficult for me to test the campaign because
you couldn't.
Because I couldn't. And in particular, I wanted to go find all the secrets and do all that kind of stuff. But if every time you finally find all the secrets, then it gets wiped. Then now the
secrets become less tantalizing.
Yeah, it all becomes way less tantalizing.
And I think the other weird thing about it was your wife was also playtesting alongside you, and she
had the same problem.
Had the same problem, but different.
Yeah.
Whereas for her save was wiped one time, and then it was perfectly fine forever after that.
Yep.
And Adam's kept wiping repeatedly
over
and over again, but in a weirdly inconsistent way. So then, last night I was working on this thing. I was like, it has to be related to the online save syncing, right? And so we pinned it down. First we thought, okay, Adam played the game
a long time ago.
April or something.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
And we have rebuilt everything about how Rumpus handles.
So maybe there's just some old data in there clogging up the pipes.
There's some old data in there, and most importantly, it was missing this one crucial piece of information, which is required for it to know whether things are up to date. So basically what kept happening was Adam's game kept thinking that he was out of date and then just replacing what he had with what the server had, which was nothing. So it just kept replacing his save. So we solved that problem. And then
fix it.
And then Adam started a new save. It wiped it again. But then it was fine forever. Just like his wife's was.
Yeah. Yep.
So then I was like, I don't fucking know. So I'm looking through all the code. I have no idea. I go to bed. I'm like, so
I sent a message at Discord at 6:03 in the morning, I think is what it was.
Yeah. Cause like I all of a sudden I just woke up at 5:20 and I was just like, wait a minute. I feel like there's something. But I didn't have any answers, so I just laid there for like 8 more minutes. And then I just flew out of bed and was like, I got it. I figured it out. I quickly threw on a pot of coffee, ran downstairs, and start fucking programming. I was like, one line.
Yep.
One line of code, just pointed at the wrong fucking thing. That was it, you know?
And this is the thing that's so scary about, again, like
everything.
Like bugs in general, I just don't even worry about, because I'm like, we'll figure that shit out. It's always fine. But it's the same like with all of the Rumpus stuff too, right? Because not only do we worry about your data being nuked from the game, but we also worry about it being nuked from our online service. Yeah. And then we also have to worry about the interplay between those two things, because one might nuke the other inappropriately or whatever.
Yep.
And so that's where all of my darkest fears live.
Yes, now, me too. We're talking about this because if you're signing up for the abs, just know that we will probably accidentally delete your shit. That's part of being.
That's part of the deal.
That's part of being in the alpha.
Part of the journey. You know.
The alpha is not just. It's not just temporary access to a good time playing a game that nobody has played yet. Like, that's a big part of it, definitely. But the other part is you're going to be frustrated.
It's temporary access to a game that's probably broke as fuck in all kinds of ways that we don't even know.
Yep.
We've been doing internal QA. We've been doing all kinds of stuff, but this just goes to show that, you and your wife sitting down and playing it, all of a sudden you guys are playing it with 2 different sets of parameters that we have not actually seen in the office, just because of various things.
Yep. So, well, it was that difference too between everybody in the office has been playing it over the past few weeks as well, right? And so if they ever had any of these problems, it was also at a different time, right? And
also they didn't have any campaign progress.
They didn't have any campaign
so
progress.
They wouldn't have noticed
exactly
if it got deleted.
Yeah. Yeah. So everything. So we just like these problems got suddenly revealed because different people were playing, which is the whole point of the alpha.
This is also usually why during an alpha or a beta, something with Crashlands beta, we worked basically for 3 days straight for the first 3 days.
We're hot fixing things.
Yeah, that was all those sorts of things where it was, here's this issue, which is basically if something's blocking progress or in the worst case resetting progress. Those are the things that we just attack very aggressively. And so those first few days of any one of these is always just like it's just kind of horrifying because you're just waiting for those to come. They're always in there. You need to wait for them to come down the pipe. Ugh.
Yeah, it's a complicated machine that we have. I think Levelhead is now something like 90,000 lines of code.
It's a little complicated.
So there's some things in there going on. I don't even know.
Let's talk about work, just the volume that we're doing. Because we had a few people in our Discord say, what's the difference between what you're doing at Crunch?
Right, because we're working on Saturday. Like I'm working at 7 p.m. on a Sunday, and then I'm suddenly working again at 5:30 a.m. today.
Yep. So what is the difference? Because it sounds a lot like Crunch on the face of it.
I think
it does, doesn't it?
It's kind of like the definition of addiction, right? Which is that there's not a line that you cross where you go from being like enjoying a thing to now being addicted to that thing, right? There's the sort of the classic sort of medical definition is basically when it starts to create problems in your life, right? The same thing with like mental illness, like all this kind of stuff. It's because everything actually lives on a spectrum, right? And so we all have different degrees of any given problem or any given, whatever. But it's once that thing starts to become a negative force outside of its own sort of domain, that's when you can start classifying it as some sort of like an actual illness or an actual problem or whatever. And to me, that's kind of what Crunch is,
I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, which is, I love work. I work a lot. Right now, but when we're not under some sort of severe crunch of some sort, or some time constraint.
Don't use the word.
When we're not under a severe time constraint, then I work much more closer to like your normal, 50-hour work week or whatever. And once we hit some sort of a time pressure thing, then now I'm willing to put in another, 10 to 20 hours a week or whatever. But it's not, I don't do it in a way that takes away from everything else.
It's not the cost of like health and sleep and
because I make sure that I'm still doing those other things. And it means that I'm usually what I'm doing is actually cutting away all the stuff that like I didn't need to be doing anyway, which is mostly like watching TV and and there is a little bit of a social cost where I'm just less likely to reach out to people to be like, hey, let's hang out or anything like that.
Yes.
And then with my wife, I have to make sure that we're on the same page and just be like, hey, I've got this unknown length time span where I'm going to be just kind of less aware of things that need to be dealt with, at home. And I'm going to be home later than usual this whole time and so on, just so that she can now be on board so she can be mentally prepared for a slight tweak in what our relationship looks like for the next, few months or whatever. But I make sure that I still spend plenty of time with her and, we still talk every day. We still have meals together. We still do all that kind of stuff. It's just that now things are a little bit more compressed.
Yeah. So I basically save all any socializing and stuff just for like post 7 p.m. because the reality is most of the time I'm not getting any quality work done past that point anyways. So, but even last week, I mean, it's, I went bowling and out with friends on Thursday night, had a movie watching party on Friday night. Didn't do anything on Saturday, thankfully. And then yesterday went and watched the Oscars at someone's house. But during the day, on both Sunday and Saturday, came to worked a bunch, hung out with my wife a bit. So like, I think that's that stealing the definition from addiction is the good way to do it. Where it's once it interferes with.
Right. There's a difference between working a lot and only working.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So, because I feel like I'm still able to go to the gym, like able to, run errands, help out around the house, do all that stuff. So it doesn't feel like it's taken over in a way. Yeah. It is a lot, but it's not.
It's a lot
consuming. Yeah.
And it will be a lot for a while.
Yeah.
For the foreseeable future.
Till we get this thing further along and are no longer, crap in our britches.
As they say.
Yeah. Also, we've started to amp up our sort of marketing efforts and our community relations. Sam made a video.
Yeah. So I built a level. It's one of the campaign levels, actually, for Levelhead.
Now people will know where the GR17 is.
Yes.
But only for that level.
Secret reveal.
But yeah, so basically what it was just I did an hour-long video and then time-lapsed it down to 20 minutes. Which is a 3x speed, and then just went back and talked over it. So comically, because the build music is very chilled out in Levelhead, because of course you're going to hear it literally for hours while you're building levels. It makes really nice, just sort of a chilled setting, hanging out, like just building some levels. And I kind of, I tried to be a bit of a goofball with it too when I was talking about it. So I channeled some Bob Ross for it. It's been very funny. Actually, it's been received a lot better than I had anticipated. So people have been really enjoying it. And
yeah, is it like a almost 200 thumbs up and then 1 thumb down?
Who is that? Who is that person?
Who is that? And they were there almost immediately. Yeah, they were like one of the first people to hit it. They're like, I don't want this.
Yeah, I don't care about that person. Fuck that guy. So
there's always that guy.
But yeah, it was really fun to do. So I think actually I'll do another one of those. And we're getting to this really interesting point too, where Seth has so much programming to do that I can't, in good conscience, try to get him to put any more of my stuff in that involves him. So any more art. It's just kind of one of those like whatever's in there is probably just going to be the thing.
That's where it is.
For this alpha coming up. So. So I got to find other stuff to do. And one of the most productive things I could do is get other people to think about the game a lot. So, there'll hopefully be a few more of those videos coming out as we go.
What do you mean, hopefully?
Hopefully. No promises.
Who could determine if
there's no way this is much like a shower towel situation.
I'll figure it out when I get there.
We're in here. It's Monday. We don't know.
No, we don't know.
We'll figure it out. What's going to happen.
And we also are doing some fun stuff with telemetry.
Telemetry.
So we got this cabana thing hooked up, which I think, Adam, you talked about.
I think I mentioned the elk stack.
The elk stack. Yeah, we talked about the elk stack. So we got this new beefy back end.
Yes.
Where we can essentially send a whole bunch of different pieces of data to. It's got sort of like event-driven data.
Would you say Rumpus has become more sensitive in the sense
it has.
It can sense.
It can sense more things. It's sensitive.
Yep.
It's got a sensitive rump.
So what we've done with this is we can use this to sort of do checks on the health of different aspects of the game. And so, for example, we can we have a certain idea of, like, as people go through the campaign, how hard different levels are supposed to be, right? And so we can send data on how people's attempts at the different campaign levels have turned out. And we can now look at like the win-loss ratios of different campaign levels, and we can get them in the order in which people see them. So we can look for we can literally see over time spikes in difficulty happening, maybe at areas that we didn't intend. We can also track like how many collectibles are people picking up? Is there a specific one that people just tend to not get? And if so, maybe is that okay, or is that just like, is it too hard? You know, so we can actually use this to diagnose problems.
But I will say, I mean, it's really interesting using it as a design piece because, you know, it's been interesting, I think, in the industry for the last like 5-10 years because there's been this huge, you know, data-driven design thing. But it's really funny looking at the data because there's plenty of levels where there is a tremendous difficulty spike that happens. But what we also hear from anybody who's played them is like that's oftentimes one of their favorite levels. And so you don't know, basically this piece of data means absolutely nothing by itself.
I think you don't use data to drive design. You use it to diagnose problems.
Yes. Yep.
Because like, because like if you're you know, kind of have that, if you have a theory about how those curves should look, then you might think like, oh, well, each level should be slightly more difficult than the last. Right. And so what I should see in the curve is just like a nice smooth slope. And I need to keep tweaking the levels until
they're perfect.
Until they're completely bland and nothing memorable happens the entire time.
So there's this level right now about halfway through the campaign called Doom Dream. And it's the first level that is an auto cam level, which means that the camera just moves and you gotta deal with that fact. And so you gotta keep up, and it's like climbing this big crazy structure. And makes use of 2 different power-ups, and there's switches and all this. It's a very crazy thing. And even on the few in-person playtests I've done with it, people struggle on it tremendously. But also afterwards, they're usually like, that was really fun. That was great. And we saw it now, and using Cabana, the death ratio on that thing is
very high.
Through the roof.
It's through the roof.
I think right now it's the hardest level in the game. Right now it's like 150 to 1 or something.
Yeah. So it takes a long time to beat. But again,
there's another cool part about it though, because we're tracking deaths, wins, and resets, right? Because we're thinking like if a level has a high rate of people resetting, then possibly like, there may be a problem because maybe people are getting stuck, like maybe they throw something away that they should have or whatever, right? And so we can look for those red flags. It's literally red on our marker. That level has none.
Yeah.
Nope. As people play through that level, they're just like, they never reach a point where they think like, I should start over, you know?
Yeah.
They play it until they die.
They just keep going. So
it's
good.
A fun one. It's a good one.
Yeah. And interestingly, the levels that have the most plays are often the mid-range levels when it comes to how long it takes to actually beat them. Or in some cases, they're on the shorter end. People are basically dying a lot really, really fast, like back to back. You know,
I think a lot of those are also the ones that have secrets in them, though, too.
Yeah.
You know, so because I know I definitely found that my gameplay experience was completely driven by trying to find
all the secrets. Yeah, same. Yeah, I was thinking about that because we added all these little things that you can collect, you know, and I think if we didn't have those, the campaign would be
boring as fuck.
Yeah.
So
like
boring.
You'd beat the level and you're like, I beat it. Nothing else to do, but I guess there's no point in going back.
Yeah, the nice thing is because of how we handled the unlock system too, sometimes you need to have acquired those secrets to unlock stuff. And also sometimes you don't know that you would need those. And so
you want all of them.
It very rapidly creates a situation where you'll just replay levels until you 100% each one of them because you don't know.
There was the first Eye of Gorbel level, which is a little ninja guy.
Sneaky guy.
Sneaky guy. So my wife played it, and then so she got done with her PlayStation and came over to watch me play for like the last like 20 minutes or something before we went to bed. And so then I got to that level, and she was like, there were 9 coins on this level that I just could not find. So she's like, I'm going to see if you can like find some extra. You know,
was it the ones at the top left?
I don't know. I don't remember. Wait, the ones that are like with the GR17?
Yeah.
No, we found those ones.
Okay.
But then at some point I was like sliding down a thing and went all the way to the bottom and found an extra like handful of coins, right? But I got to the end and I was still 8 coins short. So then I was like, okay, so between the two of us, we're missing like different
There's
sets.
a Venn diagram.
Yeah. and we're not sure what left out. But so then
that's a huge level too.
It is too, because I was like, I need to play this again to go find those fucking coins. But it was like
thing.
9:30 and I was like, okay, but it's a big level, so I just figured I would do that on my next play.
There's a couple of levels that actually just take like 7 to 10 minutes to beat.
Yeah,
just straight, like even if you're
there's just a lot.
There's just a lot in it.
Yep.
Which is really fun.
Which is nice. They have checkpoints, you know, and they're paced out very well.
I mean, even the first one that has a bunch of secrets in it, where you have to get up and over everything. Because when I first started playing it, because there's a part that looks like you could get up there, as in like it's sort of set up as stairs, sort of, you know? And so you're looking at it, you're like, there's no way in hell I can make that jump under any circumstances, but it looks like I'm supposed to be able to, you know? So I spent a good like 5 minutes just
leaping at it,
trying to do things, trying to figure out what I could do. And then I ran to the end of the goal, and then I was like, and then noticed, I was like, oh, there's a fucking ladder over here, basically. I was like, oh, okay, so I have to go. And I'm like, I see what's going on here.
Well, that's honestly one of my favorite parts about doing the design of it, because the whole point of like the whole really fun part about being a level designer in a campaign is that you develop this design language that you get people to learn how to read very slowly over the course of like the first 10, 15 levels, where if they start seeing what appear to be abnormalities in the terrain, or like just coins that seem like if they were just coins, they should be to the left a few grid spaces, but for some reason they're up against this wall. Like, it's odd. Most of the time they're nicely floating in the middle of stuff. Then you start teaching people how to read where there might be something, and then you see, like, one of my favorite things to do during the testing was just to see where people start poking around based on that, and then actually just go put secrets there, because the whole point is that if it feels like you don't want to do it all the time, you basically start putting red herrings in. So there's also tons of those throughout the whole campaign, where the design language I use to show people where secrets are, I also just use as duds.
Yeah, because
about 50% of the time.
The key one is like the little chunk.
There's a little notch cut out.
Or there's like just a hole in the backdrop for no fucking. You're like, what? Why? Yeah. What is that about?
And it's just something anomalous.
Exactly.
Basically.
You teach people how to read the anomalies, and then it's so fun, because I think that's actually what so much of the fun part is, because it becomes very much a conversation with the designer and the player, where it's like, I put this here. Can you find it? And the player's like, I got it. It's so fun. Yeah, I love it.
It's pretty good. The game is coming along very well. I'm really excited to see what people.
I'm so excited.
What people think about it. So, also we have one final piece of studio news, which is we have a new operations manager. We actually have for a few weeks, but she's been going through training, so she's ramping up. And it is my wife, Sampada, and she is coming from a 7-year background where she was doing HR and operations style stuff at another company. She's looking for a change of scenery. We had Levelhead coming, and we're like, thank God, we need some fucking help over here.
When it comes to running the business side of things, we've all been putting quite a bit of time into that aspect for the last, years, and it's very nice.
But also ignoring as much of it as possible.
Yes, and also just not doing
our business. Yeah, we really lean hard on the can we not principle when it comes to managing the business.
Yep.
It's probably not the greatest.
It's not the greatest. So yeah, she's already been, frankly, absolutely incredible when it comes to like a lot of this stuff, and then found places where, surprised, we weren't actually being paid by someone who's supposed to be paying us money.
Yeah, she found a bunch of
stuff like that.
A bunch of invoices that we had sent out, and they're like,
never got paid for.
They never sent us this money, right? And we're like, what?
Yeah, so
she's hunting all that down, breaking some kneecaps. She's a 6'1" tennis player, so she's got an arm.
Yeah, you don't want to see her at your front door collecting.
That's right.
Yeah, good.
So yeah, she's been doing a lot of good work for us, and she's going to be ramping up. She's going to come with us to GDC as well. So just kind of get a feel for the whole scene.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm excited about the fact that if a new business opportunity comes up, we don't have to stop development.
Yes.
To go through the contracts and all of the conversations and stuff. So it's just one of those process improvements that we're always talking about. So I think that's all the news that we have for the day. So again, get into that abs if you want to be in the Levelhead alpha. And otherwise, if you don't, then I guess it's also fine.
It's fine.
You do whatever you want. It's your life. So let's go on some questions. These questions come from podcast.bscotch.net. First question comes from Sean, who says, question that could be answered by either Adam or Seth or both. As self-taught programmers and the ever so persistent intruder syndrome that comes associated with it, at what point in time do you feel in your career did you feel like an actual developer? Or did you ever? I feel like Sam has hit on this with his art, having gone so long referring to himself as not really an artist.
Yeah, I've been pretty apparent.
So I want to say, first of all, the technical term is imposter syndrome. Intruder syndrome might mean...
That's where you just burst into people's conversations.
So if you feel like an intruder, just stop bursting into people's homes and buildings.
Yeah, quit being the Kool-Aid man.
So that's one thing.
Yeah.
So
the imposter syndrome, the idea of it is that as you gather skill in a field, it kind of follows. We've talked about the Dunning-Kruger effect, the J curve, a lot of the stuff in previous podcasts where.
Yeah, imposter syndrome is after the first part of the Dunning-Kruger, because the Dunning-Kruger is all about like you basically, it's all about your misrepresentation or your misunderstanding of your skills.
You learn a very small amount,
and you think
that now you are the same as an expert,
right?
Yes. And
so once you get past that hump, you then end up in the
dip, the imposter syndrome,
dip.
Canyon.
Yeah,
which basically says while you're capable of doing things, you are just sort of waiting for someone to find out that you don't know as much as
but your skill is still going up at that time, and so it's actually there's this really big gap because you still actually don't know very much when imposter syndrome first kicks in for the first time. That's you suddenly realizing that you're not hot shit.
Yes,
right, and that's good for you.
Very healthy.
You need that in your life, and it's also accurate. Right, because it's right when it first kicks in, right? It's correct. The problem is that it kicks in a little too hard, and it just goes,
it'll just last,
and then it lasts for a long time. And as there and it should. If this doesn't happen to you, then you actually have a different problem, which is
being a sociopath,
which is being an egomaniac.
Yeah, something.
You either have imposter syndrome or you're an egomaniac. Those are your two.
Those are your
two paths, I think.
Right. Either you think that your work is infallible.
Yeah.
Which we did talk a little bit about last week about like learning how to evaluate your work from the outside and disregarding the fact that you made it because that fact has literally no value to anyone, right? So people buying your products are only going to look at the thing. So you need to get your ego out of there. So that's part of it.
So you end up in that part and then it's just a slow climb where you increase your skill and then increase your ability to actually accurately gauge your skill relative to where it truly is, right?
The industry,
but that comes with a lot of pieces because you actually have to understand what it means to be skilled in the industry, like and at different levels. Because of course there isn't just skilled in the industry. There's like a junior developer and I don't know the names because we don't work like in the
medium
industry. Medium,
leads,
and high probably.
Leads, seniors.
Yeah, sure. That's probably it.
Venti,
the tall ones,
grandes,
tall grande.
We need a tall programmer.
Yeah. So I honestly have no fucking clue when it comes to like web development. If I were to go out in the industry, like I don't know what the spectrum even is or where I fall in it.
Well, this is why doing Global Hack was super fun.
Yeah.
Because we don't know where we stand relative to people, and then we can come and just throw down a weapon and be like, look at this, and then
we can still throw down.
So it's kind of nice because we know we're not. It means we're not at the bottom.
Yeah.
So that's good. So imposter syndrome's kind of gone.
So I have a confession.
I
don't think I've ever experienced imposter syndrome.
But have you experienced the belief that everything you're doing is really good?
Yeah, I've definitely been on that. I definitely hit that peak at the beginning where I was like, "Oh my god, I'm so fucking great at this," and later been like, "Oh, I definitely was not nearly even vaguely as great as I thought that I was." Right, but I don't think I swung the pendulum the other way.
You went towards the accuracy.
At least
as far as you know.
Yeah. I never hit a point where I felt like I was misunderstood. Where I thought that, because I guess the idea of imposter syndrome is you're doing the work and you're making stuff, and some people are like, "Hey, this is pretty good," and you're sitting there thinking, "But maybe it isn't," and eventually somebody out there is going to suddenly discover that I've been like bullshitting the entire time, right? Because I always felt like I was always bullshitting, and that's just kind of how people do things. And I don't.
Yeah, that's a more.
And I was really overconfident at first, but
so you still like were on the first part of the Dunning-Kruger, right?
Yeah.
So is a key part of imposter syndrome then the fact that you're actually trying to relate yourself to the group of people who does the same work? That's actually
and you have a belief that they know something that you don't, and that even though the stuff that you're producing, on the face of it looks the same in terms of quality and is like, that somehow they have some knowledge that you don't have. And that you're going to be found out as a fraud.
But it's not just that either, because it's also your inability to judge the quality of your work. So it's not just like, oh, I'm making stuff that's the same quality, but I must somehow be doing a worse job anyway, right?
Right.
It's the literal incapability of someone basically looking at the work that they've made and being unable to realistically compare it to somebody else's work, right? So that you actually can't say this work is as good as that work. All you actually will ever say is my work is worse because I made it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's like, I think there are lots of, just like anything, there's a spectrum of imposter syndrome, right?
Right.
And when you get all the way away from it, you end up in like the realism phase. Sorry, when you get right in the
where
middle
you can look at a thing you made and impartially evaluate it.
Yeah.
And think
it's like the imposter to egomaniac.
And you
curve.
can say like,
it's like
the thing
if you're
that
in the
I've
middle,
made,
you're accurate.
Right.
And if you go left, you're full of yourself. And if you go right, you're undervaluing yourself.
Right. So you can take the thing that you've made and set it next to like 10 other things that are out there in the market that are roughly in the same area. And you can reliably kind of pinpoint where it falls.
Where you're at,
exactly. In terms of.
And we see this constantly with people who are on the other side of the curve, right? Where they make something that you just is visibly garbage, right? And then they can't understand why nobody will buy it.
Yes.
Right. And this is so common in certain circles that it's sort of
it's common
trope,
in any kind of creative field.
Yeah, it's true in writing, it's true in everything. And I know I've met people who've like given me samples of their writing, like, you know, throughout my life, where they were like super excited, they were like going to go self-publish it and do all this kind of stuff, and then I would read it and be like,
maybe not.
They're clearly not here to ask for feedback. Otherwise, this is not what we're going to be happening. So I'm not going to provide any. But I still have, because it's also hard to get things off of your Amazon account if you got them in there, you know. So I still have a couple self-published works that are so bothersome. I want to burn them off of the thing.
Get them out of there.
Yeah,
but and this is kind of tricky too, because of course when you first start at something, you're just bad at it, and that's part of it.
That's required.
That's required. That's part of the learning process. And I do think that there's that part early on where you're bad at it, but you haven't done it enough to see just how bad.
Yeah.
And so you think that you're miles and miles ahead of where you're at. And that's where you end up with those kinds of situations. I think the problem is if you find yourself in that place for a really long time where you think that the thing that you're making is just unbelievably great and nobody else seems interested in it for years and years and years, you gotta take a step back, you know?
Okay, so going back to the question, like how was that trajectory for both of you? And then where are you at now?
So I was actually similar to Seth as well, which is that I never really dove deep into the imposter syndrome territory.
But do you feel like that's because both of you actually have had less of a relationship with sort of the industry group in a sense? No,
I think actually in a lot of ways it probably would have helped because I would have had a sense of like what it means to be good or not, right? And I think for me it was my trajectory through life was like super focused on academia and, you know, then doing the science path and all this kind of stuff where I embraced a long time ago the idea that I didn't know anything and neither did anybody else, right? And so that allowed me to kind of pull that part of the ego thing away when I would be trying to evaluate my own work. I've been able for a long time to evaluate it on its merits, not on my merits, right? Or like what I believe the person I am and all that kind of stuff. So that if I look at something I made, I feel like I can fairly accurately judge it in the absence of the fact that I made it. And so that allowed me to be, I still like follow the curve because you can't not follow the curve.
Yeah. But it's a question of how high you spike and
it's how high you go and how low you go,
how low you dip.
And I felt like I did the same that early Dunning-Kruger part where you like overestimate. I definitely did that. But when I started coming down the other side and recognizing just how little I actually did know, I found it pretty easy to not reduce my own self-worth and value, et cetera, as a consequence. I was just like, okay, well, there's just a bunch of shit I don't know. Like, then I would try to learn stuff. But it did take, it basically took until 2 years ago when I finally got out of, not exactly the imposter syndrome part, but like I never considered myself to be like a professional programmer or a web developer, or whatever. And not because I thought I was undervaluing myself, but because I knew that I literally wasn't doing any of the things that professional software developers do.
You're just hacking away.
I was literally hacking, right? And that doesn't mean I was doing a bad job. And it doesn't mean I was writing bad code. It doesn't mean any of those things. And I didn't think that it did. It just meant I was not behaving the way that I understood a professional programmer would be behaving. And so it wasn't until I started to build Rumpus and switch to a completely new stack of web tech and try to really start to deploy like true software methodologies that people like actually use out in the world, as far as I understand it, given that I don't participate in it, that I started to see myself as an actual like professional programmer.
So it's basically it's less about the work output and more about the sharing of the methods to get there that made you feel
it's about actually being part of the system, right? That's what allows you to do. And that's what allows you to evaluate your work, because if you're only hacking ever, right, then you actually can't evaluate your work, right? Like the quality of the work itself. You can evaluate the outcome, right? And that's why it never bothered me, because I was like, I'm getting the outcomes that I want. But the way in which that I did it, I had no way to know if it was good or not.
Right, because it was essentially random. It was
essentially random, and there's no benchmarks to compare it to. If I look at other people's code, it looks completely different from mine because I'm not using any standards, So like, I can't, and I don't know what I do and don't know because I don't have people to bounce stuff off of, right? But once you start adopting standards and adopting ways of doing things, then now all of a sudden you're like, okay, well you actually get to start looking at the set of like shared knowledge that these people are supposed to have, given that they're in this category.
You can more easily compare.
And you can more easily compare because now you can like open up people's source code, for open source projects and look at the quality, look at how that's written and ask like, do I understand this? And is this how I would write it? And those sorts of questions. And that starts to allow you to just actually judge what you're doing relative to other people because it's related. It's actually oranges to oranges instead of apples to oranges.
Yeah. I think the one time where I kind of bumped up against this probably is earlier in my programming career. I would meet computer science people, like people who had a master's in computer science or math or and these people could talk circles around me when it came to their understanding of algorithms and all this other
data
stuff,
structures and everything else.
Yeah, and that did bother me at the beginning, but only in the sense that I was wished that I knew what they knew. Like that was, I would hear about these things. I'm like, oh man, I wish I had, gone to school for the thing that I'm doing so that I would have that foundational knowledge instead of like flailing my way through. But at the end of the day, I was still going to work every day, making games and programming all day. And so, and getting generally good responses with the stuff that I was doing. And I was like, okay, well, I'll learn that stuff as I need to. Right. And it sucks that I don't know it, but it's also not really a problem, so it's fine.
Yeah, this is fine. I think, especially with how things work now, where you can just see so many people's work just by, tooling around on Twitter or on Instagram, or whatever else, whether it's an art context or a programming context. I think it's one of those things that's really easy to forget that what you're always seeing is polished final products. And so you're
not seeing the Git history
exactly
of all the garbage.
You just can't know how fucking hard it is to actually get to that point and how many steps are involved and how many missteps are involved, I think. And I think it's kind of unfortunate because there's not enough, I think, behind the scenes on these things that let you really understand the extent to which everyone's kind of flailing through and learning as they go, whether it's programming or whatever else. And the end result, I think, is it makes it harder to pick up and stick with something in the end because you keep on seeing all these just phenomenal.
It's like the Facebook problem, It
is
like people curate their Facebook feed to only show all the great parts of their life.
Yeah, so I used to and
then it makes all their friends depressed.
Yeah, I used to actively avoid things like DeviantArt or ArtStation because
it's so good.
Seriously, if you just look at anything on ArtStation, it's just like you just pull up that front page. You're like, what the fuck? Like this is
I am garbage.
It is unbelievable.
And it is still the case that like a lot of the tools that I use, while in principle, if I like really dug into it, like in principle, I could figure out how it works. It's effectively magic, Yes. So I use Vue for all the front end stuff, and that shit is goddamn magic. It's doing like all this just crazy wacky stuff, and every week I learn some new like little fundamental piece about that's why this thing that I've been doing for a year ends up having this effect. It's like there's so much to it, and it's one of those things
we're like monkeys playing with fire.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we don't know. So there are these things that I think it's healthy for a person's ego to be like, I could never sit down and like develop. There's a core developer.
It's like when
that is making this thing.
It's like when we found
one
Notion.
Fucking guy. And
Notion's a similar thing. We're like, we just look at it. We're like, I don't know.
We're like,
I don't know. I literally I couldn't even begin.
I know how to
solve
use it.
That problem.
Don't know anything else.
Yep.
Don't know what's going on.
So, but I actually find these things really reassuring because that tells me like there's literal miles for me to go before
decades, man.
Literal decades exactly before I could possibly peak in skill. Right. And by then, of course, there will be
all kinds
new
of
technology
new
and
stuff.
new stuff. So I actually love seeing just how good people can get at stuff, and also seeing how far away I am from them when I can accurately judge it. Because that gives me like, I'm like, ooh, that's a place
It's like
that
it's like the Wonder Woman thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Although with Wonder Woman, since she's an actual god, so you can't ever get there.
But you can work toward it.
Yeah, it's very inspiring, but not in a way like I'm going to do that.
Well, maybe that's where you find yourself on the other side of the imposter syndrome, is where you can look at other people's work and actually be excited and interested by it. It's like usually now,
excited by the fact that you couldn't even figure out how to do it.
Yeah, so like I actually now usually every couple of days I'll go to art station, just kind of tool around just to kind of be. To literally just
be
like,
inspired,
whoa,
basically.
yeah, this is incredible. Right. And then sometimes I look at people's color palettes and I'm like, how the fuck? I'm trying to balance like 4 over here. And it's just, I don't even know. And I'm so impressed. But I have no idea how to recreate it. I'm just
That's an interesting note, though. Basically, what we're talking about is looking at stuff that is dramatically beyond your skill.
So good. Yeah.
And then being inspired by it. Mm-hmm. And then just being like, I'm going to keep going.
Right. Yeah. Instead of getting down on yourself as a consequence and being bummed that you're not there.
Yeah. So maybe that's the point where you've kind of, where you've started to get past
you started to heal.
Well, I think it's because you start realizing that you can get to some of these points because you've been along the path enough to know what goes into just even where you're at.
Yeah. Right? But also that even if you can't, because I think you have to have a certain level of quality and like an accurate understanding of the quality of your work before you can look at other people's really good work and only be like pumped and inspired by it. Because to me, part of it is too is the awareness that like that the level of knowledge and skill required to make something like Vue is something that I don't believe I will ever have. I do not think I'm ever going to get there, right? And a lot of it is like I'm doing other things. I'm not even going to be trying to get there, right? But even if I did, the amount of work and like effort required to get to that level and that knowledge domain is fucking enormous. And I'm not going to make that journey, right? And instead of being like upset that there's somebody out there who's just like going to forever be far more knowledgeable and capable than I am in that domain, I just think it's fucking awesome that somebody is that capable and that they've made this awesome thing that I now get to use and enjoy.
Well, maybe part of it though is that you're bringing value in a very different way. You're able to use the tool to deliver value in a different way. And so part of it, I think, is recognizing whatever it is, whatever your special mix of stuff is that you're bringing to the table.
You don't have to be the one making the game engine.
Exactly. So,
but if you make a game using a game engine, like you didn't do a worse job because you didn't also make the game engine.
Yeah, I think
you just did something else.
You just did something else.
Yeah, this is very much where I've gotten with the art stuff, where it's like I don't think I will ever be making stuff that is and on purpose, because the tools we use and the sort of games we use that approaches this level of visual fidelity that you see in some of these other either 2D games or just AAA games generally, which are all about these like really beautiful and intense special effects, all this stuff. My things will be getting better all the time, but they're always, and I think they will just have like a goofy, squishy sort of vibe to it.
That's just the whole thing.
That's just what I do, you know? And I think,
and the thing is like, you're perfecting that style and it is your style. And it's one of those things that like at some point, very few people will be able to pull off something that looks like your work. Right. And that's actually already the case. It's just that a really good artist can kind of mimic a lot of stuff, you know? But it already is the case that like you're now actually in that domain. You're now one of the experts.
I've got my own style.
You got your own style. And so you actually, and this is true if you're programming, this is true if you're doing anything. Like, you know, Seth's code and the way that he designs his game content has its own style. The way that I write all my code has its own style. And I've been leaning a lot more on like industry standards and stuff than probably anybody else on the team. But even still, like you can't just like say, okay, well, this is how code gets written, and then just turn around and write code exactly like some other person.
Yeah, it's always, well, like we talked about last week, you know, if you're making Keebler Elf cookies, you got to put your soul into it.
Yeah,
that's how it's good.
It's all a creative enterprise, and so there's a lot of room for variation.
Well, so I had this last week. We were recording. Levelhead actually is the first cutscene that was sort of made on purpose
with voice
in it
in the game
for ever. And so I was working on that last week, and I was really nervous about it because I had to do the voice for it. And of course, you know, over the years, like I've done the voice for our trailers before, but there's always some assholes, you know, who are like, I hate this person, or, you know, this narrator's terrible, whatever. And so, and they're always, you know, something about it, they're trying to be someone else, whatever else. And so I was trying to figure out what this voice should be, and I was working on it, thinking about it. And then I was talking to Seth about it, and I was like, should I go for more of like this, you know, this sort of thing? And he was like, you know, just go do you, because it's going to sound like you no matter what you do. And you may as well just roll with that, just embrace that fact and use it. And so And I was really struck by it because also that day in my little like planner, the quote at the top was a Dolly Parton quote, which said, figure out who you are and then do it on purpose. And it was just like, it was such a weird, like perfect timing thing.
Yeah.
And even with this conversation, the same thing where it's just, once you figure out kind of the angle you want to take, you can relax a little bit about all these other people in the room, feeling like you don't belong, whatever else, and just recognize that, you're just doing your thing. And that's just fine.
Yeah. Well, and even just that, the internet gives us the benefit of really just fully realizing that you can't please everyone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like we got this Bob Ross style video and the comments are just universally, people are just like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
It's so great.
People enjoy it.
And then there's a thumbs down. Yep. Like there's always going to be
that one person.
Yeah.
No
People just have to shit on things. It's just, there's always that fringe.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next question comes from Potty Sitter Gamer Guy.
Potty Sitter Gamer
He's
Guy?
he's sitting on the potty gaming.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So he's probably playing maybe Crashlands or something on his phone.
Yep.
Can we take up a collection for Retro Banana Man NL so he can finally get his proper Banana Man license? He's been non-licensed for far too long.
I think at this point it's become too much of a core part of his identity.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's his brand.
Yeah, so I think
I wouldn't want to Banana Man.
Yeah, I think I would not want to take away that part of his identity.
I'm in agreement.
So I have to say no on that one.
Yep.
You got to be careful doing these sorts of things for people without asking them first, because maybe.
Yeah.
This is kind of like you ever hear about.
There's a reason he doesn't have a license.
Yeah, that's how he wants it to be.
Mm-hmm.
You ever hear about people who win the lottery and then all these terrible things start happening to them?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they had everything set up a certain way.
Figured out.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, boom, you just threw a wrench into their whole life. And now what?
You thought you were giving them the lottery, but instead you gave them
a curse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just let Retro Banana Man find his own way.
And stay uncursed.
Maybe he'll become licensed, but he needs to do it
of his own free will.
He needs to do it with his own gumption, with a plan and everything. Next question comes from Cerator. Reprise from the old shitty podcast page. This is an old question. How did you find your brand colors and what are their Pantone names? P.S. I'm listening to the podcast backwards because that is how Apple Podcasts offers them to me. And finally, before episode 100, I heard the bell sound from kicking a table leg you got rid of several podcasts later. Or for me, earlier, by hanging the mics from the wall. So we used to slap the shit out of our mics all the time.
It still happens on occasion.
For some reason, he said he listens to him backwards. I was like, how?
I think he just means in reverse chronological order, probably.
I think if you listen to him backwards, we're just slowly summoning
demons.
Some large
we actually summon demons also if you play them forwards. We did it
both
a
lot
ways.
of demon summoning.
Like the logo colors we just sort of stumbled on. So if you look at, there's actually our old logos floating around in various places. We had two of them. This one was like a flock of birds. That was before we had made anything.
I don't think we ever used that.
It was during one game jam we used it.
Okay.
And so it was around. And then we had the first one that actually said like just Butterscotch Shenanigans. But that one was actually white and gold.
Yeah.
And then it became gold and purple, etc. And it's just become a little bit more colorful as time has gone. I actually rebuilt it about a month and a half ago because we were about to make right before the Shenanigans. That was a while ago. Because we were about to get a big fat head of the logo. And I've known for a long time that it was made using my old style of making assets, and so it had actually just a shitload of rough edges on it. Which once you blew it up and stuck it on a wall, you're gonna be able to see. Yeah. And so I had to go in there and fix it. And so I also just sort of upped the color values a little bit. I don't know what the Pantones are because we just printed on stuff kind of willy nilly off of SVG files.
Yeah, if you ever worked with a larger company, they always have these they have a brand Bible where they'll have a binder, that they'll deliver to you of like all the rules in which you can use their logo.
And if you work with
the exact RGB color values, everything has to be.
And if you work with the platforms, you'll actually get that from the platforms. So if you work with Nintendo Switch, for example, like their red, very specific red.
That red.
If you're wondering why the Switch logo is usually shown with a red square around it, it's because that is how you're required according to the brand guidelines to do it.
Well, it's true. It's true with like those little like get it on iTunes or the App Store. Right? Get it on the App Store.
Again, brand guidelines.
Is we were actually told by our Apple people that we needed to stop calling it iTunes because like on our website we refer to iTunes and whatever. And like, no, you have to change this all to the App Store.
It's not the App Store.
Which we
are not that big of a fan of because there are many app stores.
Yeah, but this is
they want theirs to be the app store. So now it is.
So I just find it confusing, but apparently they've done a good enough job of maintaining this that people get it. So that's fine.
Well, I mean, the thing is,
people actually just call it the Apple App Store in conversation.
That's true.
So
I mean, it does make sense when you're dealing with when you're a huge entity like that to try to enforce some, because
you have to have standards.
Yeah, people are always trying to modify.
It's always going to be slippery around the edges, but you got to try to keep it, keep it together.
Well, they're also trying to keep people from tricking their customers and all that stuff. So I mean, I think it's all good stuff, but it has been very aggravating on occasion because, in particular, we're trying to build a web page where it's like, okay, we need to go grab the whole get it on this platform for all different platforms, and each one is different sizes and dimensions and minimum resolutions and different color palettes.
My favorite one is when they're like, this has to be first in the list of things that you put on your site, and you're like, but this one also says it has to be first. What the fuck?
It's like, all right, we'll make a vertical list and put all the first ones side by side.
I was joking about doing some Geo-Fencing, which is where you define an IP range around.
So you could put one around each platform.
Exactly.
And show
so if you're in an Apple store or something, then it's like, all right, we'll show that one first.
If you're over Google
but we
HQ,
have now conflicting brand guidelines.
Yeah.
So.
We can do it by device, right? So if your browser says it's coming from Safari, it can be like, cool. That means any iOS stuff goes first.
Now, of course, we will not do this. We always do it by the book.
Well, the thing is
everybody has to be first.
I think the Geo-Fencing one is definitely pseudo malicious and maybe not appropriate. But I think
it's really funny.
It's more like a trademark.
It's it's like a commentary, really.
Well, yeah, but I think it's kind of it feels too much like you're tricking somebody, right? I think that's no good. But I think using somebody's browser to be you're on Safari, probably you care about iOS stuff, products, so we'll put that one first because that's probably the one you care about. I think that's not only fine, but actually probably a better user experience. Yeah. So I think that one's acceptable. I haven't done it.
But it's
I could do it.
It is my least favorite part of putting trailers and things together is dealing with all the badges.
Yeah, the end screen.
The end screen takes as long to put together as the whole fucking trailer.
Because you're actually not, according to guidelines, you're not allowed just to put their logos in there. You're not allowed to do a whole bunch of stuff that you would.
No, we had to, and also I think the main thing about it is I can't just build it and be done with it because
it all needs approval.
And their approval takes a while, and then they'll always have something. Yep. So for example, we've gotten in trouble before for fading in a logo.
Yep. Because that's an animation.
It's an animation.
You can't animate the logo.
And I was like,
it has to just boom, it just has to be there.
I was like, this happens over 0.05, say it's 4 frames, and it just fades in. I'm honest, what the fuck is the
think about it.
Maybe
what will happen is somebody will pause the video during that time.
That's true.
Take a screenshot. Now, boom, there's a picture of a only partially visible logo, which is bad for the brand.
Yeah, so it's you'll spend 40 hours working on a trailer or something, and then you have these just infuriating
very
back-to-back
bureaucratic
moments. I think that's what it is actually. It's less the badges, more the bureaucracy around it. All the spacing and stuff. I don't like it. But who knows? Maybe we'll be having to do this someday. We'll be like, excuse me, the Butterscotch and the Shenanigans need to be this far apart.
Oh, that'll be the dream.
Do not put anything.
When we ever do that, I want to have literally 15 different logos that hit all kinds of different dimensions and color palettes and whatever, just so that people are you can just be choose one of these. No matter what you're doing, one of these will
work. The rule is when you use it, it has to be big enough that people can read it.
Yep.
Google Play's got a pretty good downloader thing for theirs. Where you can pick, I think you can pick how big it is or whatever, and then it just gives you the one as opposed to giving you all of them and having you sort through and get confused. Because there's one thing people don't talk about actually on the design side is just having to read through these brand documents.
Oh God, it's horrible.
My God, it's just
not
a thing you got to do.
It's not very riveting.
Yeah,
the storylines are terrible. The character arcs are they don't have any development at all.
Oh man.
Yeah, well, it's even stuff on the website because I try to use icons for a lot of stuff, And I used to then go through all the brand guidelines and only find the buttons and that kind of stuff. And now I do that only for one specific case, which is on a page that is trying to sell the game. When it needs to say get it on the store or whatever, then I still do that there. And anywhere else where I want to reference that store or whatever, I just use an icon. That's just represents the brand because people will get it and it's fine. And I know it's technically against the rules. And I'm just hoping that it's fine. And we'll just skate by.
Hopefully they're not being too much of sticklers about it in that circumstance.
Yeah, I think the thing is they mostly seem to not be. I think it's
when you're selling it or putting it on.
It's these really specific scenarios where they think it's a big deal. And I think they're probably right that it is. So
it's not in your case, but it is in the aggregate.
Yeah. Well, it's part of that. We've talked in the past about when you have a trademark, you have to develop a paper trail of showing how you've been protecting your brand.
Yep.
And having rigid brand guidelines and then being a real stickler about it
Yep.
that's part of it. You know, you make, look at this email chain where we told them to change the red, color of this thing to this exact red. So see, like we're definitely on it. All right. We have one really quick one. One for the end of the podcast, which is Flyhoppie Axerompa says, would you ever consider doing a lightning round style podcast every once in a while where instead of the normal news and conversation, you answer as many questions as you could possibly answer in an hour? If so, would you announce this ahead of time so people could submit a bunch of short, silly questions?
Yeah, we can do lightning round sometime.
So we have done
could do it next
pure question sessions.
Yeah.
But we have not given people a heads up.
Should we? Yeah, we were like, we don't have a lot to talk about because of secrets. So we'll just answer a lot
I think
of
the problem with a pure lightning round thing, if it's a whole bunch of just like one sentence question, one sentence answer kinds of scenarios, is like that's gonna for an hour. I'd want to stab my own eyes out.
What if we did?
What's the likelihood of us not talking about something?
Zero.
More than a sentence.
So the thing is, is we can't even intend to do.
We
it.
can't even just answer this question with yes or no.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So here's the thing: we could do this next week.
What if we have stuff to talk about next week?
We'll keep it very brief. If we have any news,
30 minutes or so.
If we have any news, we'll trim it from 30 minutes down to 27.
Done.
Then the rest of the episode, we will answer as many questions as we can, allocating anywhere between 5 to 20 minutes per question.
Probably what we should do is just set a timer. Set a timer that's like just a 2-minute thing. So you can't, whatever we're talking about, you got to wrap it up.
It'll be like those fun times back in college and stuff when you were given a presentation and then you just started talking, and then somebody would hold up a sign at the end, like 3-minute warning or whatever.
And you're like,
I love
great,
that.
my group threw me under the bus. Now I have to conclude this complex presentation in 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I love that shit.
Thank you.
It's the best.
Yeah, we should do that. That'd be a good way to do it.
Yeah, we could do it. We could do it next week. I'd be down. What do we have going on next? Is there something happening
next week?
I mean, we'll probably
talk about.
We might have more Levelhead stuff to talk about, but we can do it quick.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right. Next week is going to be a question blitz.
Okay. Question
If it's a
question
lightning
answer.
round.
No, but it's like slow lightning. So it's like
That's ball lightning is a lightning
it's
round.
a ball lightning. Yeah, it's the ball lightning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ball lightning episode.
So
lightning round.
submit your questions this week at podcast.bsketch.net.
Or maybe a
Keep 'em
lightning
snappy.
round is when a thunderstorm's happening, and then it adds additional layers of lightning striking at the same tempo.
Yep,
Like a choral round. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Like
just
when
keep on
people sing
building.
row, row, row your boat.
Exactly.
And that thing.
Now it's all lightnings.
We'll make a lightning round.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So
Is
submit
ball lightning
questions.
slow?
What the fuck is ball lightning?
Is it literally a ball of electricity?
It's a ball of electricity. People have talked about it. I remember looking this up a while back. So I was like, is this real?
It does exist.
It is real, but people have been unable to sort of figure out what causes it. It's hard to debug.
Can it right, it's not reproducible.
It's basically a lightning bug.
Does it roll? Like what is it?
No, it just
Is it in the air as a ball or is it on the ground?
It's in the air. In some cases, it is moving, and in other cases, it's stationary. It lasts for a very brief moment, and then it goes away.
Has it ever dunked through a basketball hoop?
Nobody's ever dunked a ball lightning.
Okay.
And it's
Has
never
Thor dunked a ball.
It's never, I mean, yeah.
Probably, yeah. It's within reason.
It's never
slow-mo, I
self-dunked
assume.
as far as people know.
Yeah.
But, there's that saying of if a ball lightning dunks itself and nobody's around to see it,
That's true.
did it actually dunk?
Maybe it shows up sometimes ready to dunk, sees people watching, and then it's like, oh shit, it gets out.
I just got some imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I can't be doing
Ball
this.
lightning is
This.
basically when you accidentally sort of like walked in on a ghost playing basketball, and then they panic, and then they get the fuck out of there.
And the speed with which they exit creates a ball lightning.
No, they were already playing with the ball.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
They're running away with the ball now.
Okay.
That's why when people see the ball landing, either it stands still or it just leaves, right? Because it's like either the ghost was like, "Oh shit,
Maybe
then,
if I sit here,
maybe
they
they caught me playing basketball in the living room." Yeah, or they just ran away.
Yep.
All right, so submit questions. Podcast.bsketcher.net. Keep them.
We're going to easily answer at least one question.
Keep them generally brief. We're gonna go real hard on these questions. We're gonna get 6. No promises. We're gonna get up to 1 question answered next week. So
up to part of one question answer.
all right, so we'll do that. And that's all time we have for this week. So we'd like to thank our producer, Fat Bard, for making us sound good. Thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running, which is now completely buried in new people who are getting into the Levelhead alpha. And when I say buried, I mean we like.
And when you say getting into, you mean who are applying?
Who are applying to the abs? Yeah,
we crested the 500 mark.
I think we almost hit the 600.
Yeah, we hit like 570 or something.
Yeah. It's going to be a madhouse in there. We're gonna have to figure out how to solve this problem sooner rather than later.
We'll do it later.
Well, actually, right now, almost everybody who comes in doesn't say anything. So currently, we don't have to solve this problem.
Perfect. Just keep doing that. Just come in and lurk. To get more involved in the Butterscotch community, you can go to podcast.bscotch.net. We got merch. We got links to the community Discord where you can come and lurk. We got ways for you to donate to the podcast and also links to the podcast archives. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.